The HOA rolled a convoy onto my farm and ordered me off my own land. They thought their paperwork guaranteed victory until they learned exactly who my wife commanded. Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. And before we begin, tell me where you're watching from today. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. Now get comfortable, because this one started with a blue farm gate, 5 vehicles, and a woman who believed confidence could substitute for ownership. You have 10 minutes to clear your equipment off this property. I actually looked behind me when Marjorie Prescott said it. Maybe there was another farm nearby, another blue gate, another man standing on land his family had owned for 3 generations. There wasn't. It was 5:58 Monday morning, and 5 vehicles were rolling through the entrance of Callahan Creek Farm. I had been opening an irrigation valve when the first diesel engine reached me through the fog. Then another. 2 Cedarvale HOA pickups came off the county road with amber lights flashing. Behind them crawled a private security SUV, a flatbed carrying concrete barricades, and a trailer hauling a compact excavator. Marjorie's black crossover followed. Wet soybean leaves brushed my jeans as I walked toward the lane. The air smelled like damp soil, diesel exhaust, and the creek running beneath the old stone culvert. By the time I reached the blue gate, Wesley Crane was already pointing contractors toward the chain. "Don't touch that." The nearest worker stopped. Marjorie didn't. She stepped from her vehicle wearing a cream-colored coat and polished boots that had probably never crossed a muddy field before sunrise. A document rested beneath one arm. "Mr. Callahan, Cedarvale is taking control of the emergency access corridor this morning. My name is Luke, and you're standing on Callahan Creek Farm." She handed me the paper. "Emergency access possession notice." County-style parcel numbers ran down the first page. A shaded strip crossed my north field towards Cedarvale. It looked official. That was the dangerous part. "Who gave you possession? Our legal authority is explained there." That's not what I asked. Behind her, hydraulic ramps slammed against gravel. The excavator trailer was unloading. Wesley motioned toward my gate again. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "It is 6:03 a.m. I am Luke Callahan, owner of this property. None of you have permission to remove this gate, enter this field, place barriers, or operate equipment beyond this point." Marjorie folded her arms. "Public safety supersedes your objections." A private security vehicle rolled closer. Amber strobes flashed across the wet fence. No police markings. No government seal. Just security printed across both doors. "Turn the convoy around," I said. "You've had months to cooperate. And you've had months to show me a deed." Her expression hardened. Then she nodded at Wesley. "Proceed." The chain hit the gravel. Clank. The blue gate swung inward. I felt anger climb into my throat, but I stepped backward instead of forward. Dad had welded that gate 27 years earlier. Near the hinge, beneath a patch of wet grass, an iron survey pin marked the line he'd taught me never to ignore. "A fence can move, Luke. A marker doesn't." The first HOA pickup crossed it. Then the excavator. I filmed every tire, every license plate, every face. Marjorie watched the convoy enter like she was witnessing a transfer of ownership. She knew I was a farmer. She knew my name was on the deed. She knew I had refused Cedarvale access before. What she didn't know was that Natalie had kissed me goodbye at 4:50 that morning, picked up her duty bag, and left for work. Marjorie thought she'd brought enough authority to take my farm. She had no idea what division my wife commanded. Callahan Creek Farm existed before Cedarvale had streets, mailboxes, or a homeowners association telling people where they could park. My grandfather bought the original acreage in 1968. Dad expanded it slowly. A pasture here, a soybean field there. By the time the deed reached me, the farm covered 210 acres of rolling ground, cattle pasture, hay fields, and timber divided by Callahan Creek. The north lane was never impressive. Packed gravel, drainage ditches, a stone culvert, one blue steel gate Dad welded himself. When I was 12, he took me out there after a thunderstorm washed mud across the shoulder. He carried a shovel. I carried more confidence than sense. Dad stopped beneath an old sycamore and scraped dirt away until a rusted iron survey pin appeared. "See that? Fence marker?" He shook his head. "Property marker." I looked toward the fence. It sat several feet away. Dad smiled. "A fence can move, Luke. A marker doesn't." I remembered that lesson 36 years later while Marjorie's excavator tracks pressed into the same ground. Cedar Vale hadn't existed when Dad showed me that pin. The subdivision arrived 7 years before the convoy. First came survey ribbons through the woods, then bulldozers, then rooftops. Eventually, more than 100 houses sat beyond our northern boundary. Before construction finished, the developer visited my kitchen. He wanted a 30-foot strip across the north side of the farm. Secondary entrance, emergency access, traffic relief. He offered good money. I declined. 2 months later, he returned with a larger number. Dad's handwritten field ledger was sitting beside me when I said no again. I wasn't trying to punish future homeowners. I simply wasn't turning an active farm lane into subdivision traffic. The developer eventually stopped calling. For years, nothing happened. Then Marjorie became HOA president. The first change was small. A Cedar Vale map appeared online showing a dotted line across my north field. Emergency access. Then reflective markers appeared near the ditch. I removed them. A week later, somebody painted orange lines beside the blue gate. That's when I mounted a camera on the equipment shed and repositioned an old trail camera toward the north boundary. Natalie noticed me testing it one morning. She stood in our kitchen with coffee in one hand and her duty bag beside the door. Expecting deer? HOA. She smiled. More predictable. At 4:50 most mornings, Natalie left before sunrise in an unmarked state vehicle. People around Cedar Vale knew she worked for the state. Most didn't know exactly what she did. We preferred it that way. Our rule was simple. Her badge never solved my private problems. Taxes, permits, property disputes, contractors. If the issue belonged to Callahan Creek Farm, I handled it as Luke Callahan, not as Natalie Callahan's husband. That rule mattered more than I understood then, because Marjorie wasn't simply trying to move a fence. She was trying to turn an access route my family had refused to sell into something Cedar Vale could claim it had always possessed. And while she kept looking at the blue gate, I kept thinking about the iron pin beneath the sycamore. Dad had warned me years ago, fences could move. Soon, Marjorie was going to learn what didn't. Marjorie didn't need my whole farm. She needed 30 feet of it to make Cedar Vale's next expansion work. I discovered that on a Wednesday afternoon when a county planning notice arrived between a seed invoice and my electric bill. Cedar Vale's developer wanted approval for 62 additional homes. More houses meant more cars. More cars meant more pressure on the subdivision's single entrance. Halfway through the traffic summary, one sentence explained everything. A proposed secondary emergency access connection would extend west toward the county road, across Callahan Creek Farm. A note farther down made the pressure even clearer. The added phase would need its access plan resolved before the county could treat the traffic design as complete. Marjorie had spent months talking about the expansion as if it were already inevitable. Suddenly, her urgency made sense. My North Lane wasn't just convenient. It was the piece her public promises were built around. I set the document on my kitchen table and stared at the map. The dotted line matched Marjorie's signs. Her survey paint. Her so-called emergency corridor. I called her office. "You need my land for the expansion." She didn't answer immediately. Then came that polished voice. "Cedar Vale needs reliable emergency access." That's not what I said. Public safety doesn't stop at your fence, Mr. Callahan. Neither does my deed. She exhaled slowly. This community has grown. Circumstances change. Property lines don't change because you built more houses. The next morning, 2 contractors appeared beside my north lane carrying measuring wheels. I drove over in my pickup. "Who hired you?" One checked his tablet. "Cedar Vale. You're standing on Callahan Creek Farm. We were told this was a community-controlled corridor." "Who told you that?" Neither man answered. They left. 3 days later, Cedar Vale's online map changed again. The dotted line became solid. Cedar Vale Emergency Access. Residents received a newsletter describing the lane as a historical emergency route undergoing safety preparation. Historical. That word almost made me laugh. Dad had hauled hay through that lane before Marjorie owned her first house in Cedar Vale. Then reflective posts appeared. Orange paint followed. A small camera went up near the subdivision fence, pointed toward my gate. I photographed everything. Date. Location. Distance from the iron survey pin. Marjorie arrived Friday afternoon in her silver SUV. She lowered the window but left the engine running. "You removed our markers." "I removed objects placed on my property." Those markers identify emergency infrastructure. Show me the recorded vehicle easement. Our counsel is reviewing the access history. Then you don't have one. Her eyes narrowed. We have rights that predate your objections. I leaned against my truck. My family owned this farm before Cedarvale existed. Ownership isn't the only issue. There it was. Not a deed. Not an easement. An argument. She drove away, tires scattering gravel behind her. That evening, I checked the trail camera beneath the sycamore. At 11:26 the previous night, Wesley Crane appeared in the first frame carrying a flashlight. In the second, he stood beside Dad's iron pin. In the third, he crouched with a tape measure stretched toward the fence. I saved the images to 3 different drives. Marjorie had started with signs because signs were cheap, then maps, then contractors. Each step made the next one look more official. She wasn't trying to prove Cedarvale owned my lane. She was trying to make everyone forget there had ever been a question. But 62 new houses had changed the stakes. A dotted line on a planning map wasn't enough anymore. To get what she wanted, Marjorie needed something that looked like authority. And soon, she would put exactly that piece of paper in my hands. The first time Marjorie called me dangerous, she didn't say my name. She didn't have to. The Cedarvale newsletter landed in more than 100 inboxes that Tuesday morning with a bold subject line. Emergency access obstructed by adjacent landowner. According to Marjorie, one uncooperative property owner was preventing emergency vehicles from using a historically recognized corridor. Then somebody posted a video. It showed me closing the blue gate while 2 Cedarvale contractors stood nearby. What it didn't show was me telling them they were trespassing. What it didn't show was Wesley sending them across my boundary. 27 seconds became 9. By lunchtime, residents were arguing about me online. One woman asked what would happen if a fire truck couldn't reach her children. Another called me selfish. Then Marjorie found something better. An ambulance had entered Cedarvale through the main entrance 3 weeks earlier after a resident suffered a cardiac emergency. The ambulance arrived without incident. My farm had nothing to do with it. That didn't stop her. At the next HOA meeting, Marjorie stood beside a map showing my lane in red and told residents that Cedarvale could not continue gambling with emergency response. I watched the recording twice. She never said the ambulance had been delayed because of me. She didn't need to. She placed the fear beside my name and let people connect it themselves. 2 mornings later, she came to my farm carrying a document. 3 pages. County-style formatting. Parcel numbers. A legal description. At the top, emergency access possession notice. This authorizes Cedarvale to secure the corridor, she said. I read it beside my truck. The language was dense enough to make a reasonable person hesitate. It referenced an easement. It referenced emergency access. But something bothered me. The exhibit attached to the back showed the corridor wider than anything I'd seen in our records. Where was this recorded? Our attorney has verified it. That's not a recording number. You should speak with counsel. So I called the county. The clerk confirmed there were recorded easements affecting portions of the property. She would not confirm that Cedarvale owned my lane. She wouldn't interpret the boundary over the phone either. Marjorie treated that uncertainty like a victory. By Monday morning, the convoy arrived. The blue gate opened. Concrete barricades came off the flatbed with dull, grinding thuds. One was placed across the north equipment lane. Then another. My cattle trailer sat on the wrong side. So did a fertilizer spreader I needed that afternoon. Wesley watched me measure the obstruction. You can use another route. On my own farm. He shrugged. Temporary inconvenience. I took photographs instead of giving him the reaction he wanted. At 8:17, my phone rang. Natalie, I heard Cedarvale has equipment out there. Concrete barriers, excavator, security. Marjorie's holding some kind of possession notice. A pause. Did you touch anyone? No. Any machinery? No. Good. Keep it that way. They're blocking my lane. Then document the lane. Her voice stayed level. No threats. No pushing. No moving their equipment. Record everything. I looked toward Marjorie. She stood beside her SUV while amber lights flashed against Dad's blue gate. You know something I don't. I know angry people make excellent evidence for the other side. Then she said something quieter. Bring that notice home. That night, I laid Marjorie's paperwork across our kitchen table. Natalie read the first page without touching her coffee. When she reached the attached exhibit, her expression changed. Not fear. Recognition. And that was when I realized the convoy wasn't the most dangerous thing Marjorie had brought onto my farm. It was the map. "You're not using my badge." Natalie said it before I even asked. Marjorie's possession notice lay open between us on the kitchen table, its attached map flattened beneath my coffee mug. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows. I stared at my wife. "They've blocked my equipment lane." "I know. They're telling 100 families I'm interfering with emergency services." "I know that too. And you command a state police division." Natalie held my eyes. "Which is exactly why I stay out of it." Most people around Cedar Vale knew Natalie worked for the state. Almost nobody knew she had spent 22 years with the state police or that she now commanded one of its regional operations divisions. Marjorie certainly didn't. For about 5 seconds, I hated our rule. Then Natalie tapped the map. "If I make one phone call because you're my husband, Marjorie stops being the woman who crossed your property line. She becomes the woman fighting a police commander." I leaned back. "So what do I do?" "You prove where the line is." The next morning, I called Julia Bradford, a property attorney I'd used years earlier for a drainage dispute. By noon, she had ordered certified copies of every recorded instrument affecting Callahan Creek Farm. She called me that evening. "There is an easement." My stomach tightened. Then she continued. "But it doesn't say what Cedar Vale is claiming." The recorded language allowed underground utilities, inspection, maintenance, and narrowly defined emergency access under specific conditions. It did not grant Cedar Vale possession. It did not create a permanent subdivision roadway. And it certainly didn't authorize concrete barriers across my working lane. Julia sent me the recorded exhibit. I printed it. Then I placed Marjorie's version beside it. The difference was small enough to miss at first. A boundary line extended farther west. The shaded corridor widened near the blue gate. One parcel reference didn't match. I called Henry Dalton, a licensed surveyor whose family had worked county land longer than Cedar Vale had existed. He arrived Thursday morning with a tripod, receiver, orange flags, and very little patience for opinions. "Show me nothing," he said. "What?" "Don't show me where you think the boundary is. Let the records tell me." I liked him immediately. For 3 hours, Henry worked for monuments and recorded coordinates. Near the sycamore, he brushed away wet soil. Metal clicked beneath his probe. Dad's iron pin. Still there. Henry looked toward the concrete barriers. Then toward me. "Those aren't where Cedar Vale thinks they are." "Whose side?" "Yours." That afternoon, Julia confirmed the bigger problem. Marjorie's attached exhibit was not identical to the county-recorded exhibit. She wouldn't call it forged. Neither would I. Not without proof. But somebody had changed something. Natalie listened while Julia explained it over speakerphone. When the call ended, my wife took out her phone. "What are you doing?" "Removing myself." She contacted the appropriate command personnel and formally disclosed that her husband was involved in a property dispute that might generate calls for police service. No favors. No instructions. No quiet pressure. She requested recusal from anything involving Callahan Creek Farm and Cedar Vale. When she finished, she set the phone down. "There. If this becomes a police matter, it won't be mine." I looked at the 2 maps. One recorded. One carried onto my land behind a convoy. For days, Marjorie had been betting that authority was whatever looked official enough to frighten people. Natalie had just walked away from real authority to protect the truth. That was when I stopped wanting someone powerful to save my farm. I wanted Marjorie to come back and prove exactly what she believed she could take. I stopped asking Marjorie to remove the barricades. That was the part she misunderstood. For 3 days, the concrete blocks stayed exactly where Cedar Vale had dropped them, gray and ugly across my north equipment lane. I photographed them every morning. Same angle, same fence post, same iron survey pin beneath the sycamore. Julia Bradford told me not to disturb anything unless it created an immediate safety problem. "Right now," she said, "their mess is evidence." So I used the south lane. It cost me fuel and nearly 40 extra minutes whenever I moved equipment, but I kept receipts and wrote every delay into Dad's old field ledger. Meanwhile, I added cameras. One faced the blue gate. Another covered the culvert. The trail camera stayed hidden near the sycamore. At 10:43 Wednesday night, it caught Wesley Crane walking onto my property with a flashlight. He stopped beside one of Henry's orange survey flags, looked around, then pulled it from the ground. He moved it several feet toward my field and pushed it back into the soil. I watched the clip twice. Then I called Julia. "Don't confront him." I wasn't planning to. Save the original file. Already did. The next morning, Henry returned. He didn't argue about the missing position. He measured it, photographed it, logged it. Then he launched a small survey drone over the north boundary. Its electric hum floated above the soybeans while Marjorie's security camera stared back from Cedar Vale. By afternoon, Henry had a clean visual record showing the gate, culvert, recorded boundary, barricades, and vehicle tracks. Julia sent Cedar Vale a preservation notice that same day. Emails, maps, contractor instructions, invoices, security footage, every version of the access exhibit. Nothing was to be deleted or altered. Marjorie responded by installing a new sign. Cedar Vale Emergency Corridor authorized vehicles only. It stood several feet inside my property. I didn't remove it. I photographed it. That seemed to irritate her more. She wanted an argument. Instead, she got timestamps. For the next week, Cedar Vale residents saw me taking the longer route through my south field. To Marjorie, it must have looked like surrender. Then, Thursday at 4:16 p.m., an email arrived. The subject line made me smile. Final corridor possession. Monday 6 a.m. Marjorie wrote that Cedar Vale would resume operations with contractors, security personnel, and equipment to complete control measures along the corridor. Julia read it first. She actually used the word possession again. Twice. Print it. I did. Then I placed the page inside Dad's field ledger beside the notes, showing every mile, delay, and blocked equipment movement their barricades had caused. Natalie came home after dark. She read the email standing at the kitchen counter. Still recused, I asked. Completely. And if they call the police? It goes through normal procedure. Not me. Julia had already given me the appropriate non-emergency contact information. Henry agreed to be nearby Monday with his certified survey. Nobody was hiding behind Natalie's rank. That mattered. Julia also made one thing clear. Do not bait them. Do not invite them in. You give a clear warning, you stay out of the way, and you let them make their own decisions. I understood the distinction. I wasn't setting a trap. Marjorie had announced in writing that she intended to return and take possession. My job was simply to make sure nobody could later pretend the warning hadn't happened. Sunday evening, I checked every camera battery. I left the blue gate closed but unlocked. Not an invitation. Just one less thing for Marjorie to claim I had forced her to destroy. At 5:51 Monday morning, I stood beside Dad's iron marker with coffee cooling in my hand. Fog covered the county road. Then headlights appeared. 1 pair. 3. 5. Diesel engines rolled through the darkness. Marjorie had brought the convoy back. Exactly like I hoped she would. Don't cross that gate unless you're prepared to explain it to someone besides me. Marjorie Prescott smiled like I'd just confirmed everything she believed about farmers. At 6:02 Monday morning, her convoy stopped outside the blue gate. 2 HOA pickups. The private security SUV. A flatbed. The compact excavator. Her black crossover. Amber lights pulsed through the fog, painting the wet gravel orange. I stood beside my truck with my phone recording. This time, I wasn't surprised. Henry Dalton waited half a mile away with his survey equipment. Julia Bradford had certified copies of the deed, easement, and county exhibit. Natalie was already at work, and formally nowhere near this. Marjorie stepped toward me. We notified you. I received the email. Then move your vehicle. My truck isn't blocking anything. Wesley walked toward the gate. I raised my voice just enough for every camera to hear. It is 6:04 a.m. I am Luke Callahan, owner of Callahan Creek Farm. Cedar Vale HOA, its contractors, security personnel, and agents do not have my permission to enter this property, remove the gate, move survey markers, or place equipment beyond the recorded boundary. Wesley stopped. For a second. Then Marjorie laughed. We don't require your permission. There it was. Clean. Clear. Recorded. She pointed forward. Wesley lifted the chain. The blue gate swung inward. A utility pickup crossed first. Its front tire rolled past Dad's iron survey pin. Then the excavator followed, tracks grinding against gravel. I didn't touch either vehicle. I didn't block anyone. I called the non-emergency number Julia had given me. I identified myself, described an active property dispute, explained that vehicles were entering after explicit notice, and mentioned that my wife was a state police commander who had formally recused herself. The dispatcher acknowledged it. Nothing dramatic. Exactly what I wanted. Marjorie walked past me carrying the same possession notice. You could have avoided this. So could you. At 6:16, Henry's truck appeared. He parked outside the disputed area. Julia arrived 4 minutes later. Marjorie's expression changed when she saw the document case in Julia's hand. More intimidation? Julia didn't answer. Then came another sound. Not diesel. Sirens. Brief ones. Two marked state police vehicles turned from the county road and slowed near the gate. Marjorie's face went still. Major Thomas Keene stepped from the first cruiser. He was gray-haired, broad-shouldered, and completely uninterested in anybody's performance. Who owns the property? I do, I said. Marjorie spoke over me. This is an authorized HOA emergency corridor. Keene looked at her. Ma'am, I'll speak with everyone separately. Her eyes moved from his uniform to me. Then she smiled. Not pleasantly. Of course. Keene waited. She pointed at me. His wife sent you. Nobody said anything for a moment. Even the excavator engine had gone quiet. Keene opened a small notebook. Who is his wife? Commander Natalie Callahan. His expression didn't change. Commander Callahan disclosed the conflict and recused herself. She has no operational role in this response. Marjorie's smile disappeared. Keene looked toward the excavator sitting beyond the blue gate, then at Henry's orange flags, then at the possession notice in her hand. Now, he said, nobody moves another vehicle until I understand what happened here. I lowered my phone. 6 days earlier, Marjorie had arrived with a convoy to make me feel outnumbered. This time, she had brought the same trucks, the same paperwork, and the same confidence. The difference was simple. Now every piece of it was standing exactly where the evidence needed it. Nobody touches another vehicle. Major Thomas Keene didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The excavator sat 12 feet beyond the blue gate. Its tracks pressed dark into my gravel. Amber lights still flashed through the thinning fog. Marjorie clutched her possession notice. This is an authorized emergency corridor. Keene looked toward Julia. You represent Mr. Callahan? I do. She opened her document case on the hood of my pickup. First came the certified deed, then the recorded easement, then the county exhibit. Henry unfolded his survey beside them. Marjorie stepped closer. We have an easement. Julia nodded. You do. For half a second, Marjorie looked victorious. Then Julia touched the recorded language. Utilities. Inspection. Maintenance. Limited emergency access under specified conditions. It does not convey possession of this land to Cedar Vale HOA. Marjorie's jaw tightened. Our legal exhibit says otherwise. Then we should compare them. Julia placed Marjorie's exhibit beside the certified county copy. Even I could see it now. The western line extended farther on Marjorie's version. The shaded corridor widened near my gate. One parcel reference was different. Keene studied both. Which one is recorded? Julia tapped the certified copy. This one. Marjorie pointed at hers. This came through HOA council. I'm not determining who changed anything, Keene said. I'm documenting what exists. Then he turned to the excavator operator. Who told you this area was cleared for entry? The man glanced toward Wesley. Cedar Vale Management. We were given the possession notice and the map. Keene looked at Wesley. Did you independently verify the boundary? Wesley opened his mouth, then closed it. We relied on the association. Marjorie stepped forward. Because the association has authority here. Keene didn't argue with her. He simply wrote down her answer. That was worse. Every confident statement was becoming part of the record. The notebook did what arguing couldn't. It turned her certainty into evidence. Henry walked us toward the sycamore. His survey pole clicked softly against the gravel. He stopped beside Dad's iron pin. This monument matches the recorded coordinates. He pointed toward the excavator. That machine is beyond the easement area shown in the county record. Wesley looked at Marjorie. She didn't look back. Then I handed Keene my phone. The video began. My own voice came through the speaker. Cedar Vale HOA does not have my permission to enter this property. Then Marjorie's. We don't require your permission. Nobody spoke. I showed him the trail camera clip of Wesley moving Henry's orange flag. Wesley's face drained. I was told those markers were temporary. Henry answered calmly. They were survey markers. Julia produced the preservation notice. Then Marjorie's email. Final corridor possession. Monday 6 a.m. Keene read it twice. He didn't arrest anyone. He didn't declare me the winner of a civil property case beside a soybean field. He did something much worse for Marjorie. He documented everything. Names, vehicles, positions, statements, paperwork. The mismatched exhibits. The explicit notice before entry. Another officer photographed the tire tracks, gate, barriers, survey pin, and equipment locations. Keene instructed the contractors not to continue operations while the disputed authority was being documented. The excavator operator shut down his engine. One of the contractors asked Keene whether he was being ordered off the property. Keene answered carefully. He wasn't deciding the civil title dispute on the roadside. He was telling them the claimed authority was disputed. The owner had expressly denied permission, and the documents in front of him did not match. The contractor looked at Marjorie, then at the excavator, and said he wasn't moving another bucket until his company received written clearance. A second worker started folding the orange cones. Marjorie's operation was coming apart without a single dramatic arrest. Then she tried one last time. This entire response is compromised. His wife commands state police. Keene closed his notebook. Commander Callahan recused herself before this response was assigned. A vehicle stopped near the county road. Natalie stepped out. No uniform. No badge displayed. She stayed outside the scene. Marjorie stared at her. Natalie never moved closer. Never gave an order. Never spoke to Keene. That was the moment Marjorie finally understood. She had spent weeks trying to make me look like a farmer hiding behind a powerful wife. But Natalie had removed herself completely. Marjorie had brought the convoy. Marjorie had brought the altered-looking map. Marjorie had ordered the entry. And Marjorie had said the words on camera. The convoy she'd brought to prove her authority had become the evidence documenting exactly where she'd crossed the line. 3 weeks later, the blue gate was still standing. The concrete barricades weren't. Cedarvale removed them on a cold Thursday morning under the terms of an agreement Julia had spent 14 days negotiating. No convoy came that time. Just 2 contractors, 1 flatbed, and a supervisor carrying written instructions. I watched from my pickup while the last block lifted from the north lane. The gravel beneath it was crushed. The grass was dead, but the lane was mine again. Cedarvale agreed to pay the documented cost of restoring the damaged ground, replacing disturbed markers, surveying the boundary, and covering business losses caused by blocked equipment access. They also removed the sign. The camera near my property disappeared. More importantly, every Cedarvale resident received a correction. The HOA did not possess a permanent vehicular corridor across Callahan Creek Farm. I printed that email. Then I placed it inside Dad's field ledger behind Marjorie's final corridor possession notice. 2 pieces of paper. Same property. Very different truth. The proposed 62-home expansion didn't disappear. It simply lost the shortcut Marjorie had built her plan around. Without control of my north lane, the developer had to redesign its secondary access proposal and return through the proper approval process. That cost time and money. Neither belonged to me. The question surrounding Marjorie's exhibit went somewhere else. Julia warned me not to speculate. The documents had been preserved. The discrepancies had been reported. Who changed what, when it happened, and whether it crossed a criminal line belonged to investigators and lawyers now. I was satisfied with that. Justice didn't need me exaggerating it. Marjorie Prescott didn't remain president of Cedarvale HOA. By the next monthly meeting, another board member occupied her chair. Wesley Crane was gone too. The same residents who had been told I was endangering emergency response were now reading a correction admitting the HOA had no permanent vehicle corridor across my farm. That mattered more to me than watching anyone get humiliated. The lie had been public, so the correction needed to be public too. Nobody sent me an explanation. I didn't ask for one. Most Cedarvale residents weren't my enemies. Some had believed what they were told. A few eventually stopped by and apologized. One man brought a 6-pack and admitted he'd called me selfish online. I told him to keep the beer. Then I accepted 2 anyway. Life became ordinary again. Cattle broke fences. Pumps clogged. Invoices arrived. And one Saturday afternoon, I carried a wire brush and a can of blue paint down to the north gate. Natalie found me there near sunset. She leaned against the fence while I covered the scratches left by Wesley's chain. The sycamore cast a long shadow across the lane. Dad's iron survey pin sat beneath it, exactly where Henry had found it, exactly where Dad had shown me 36 years earlier. You know, I said, you probably could have ended this with 1 phone call. Natalie looked at me. No. I smiled. No. I could have contaminated it with 1 phone call. That sounded like her. I tightened the lid on the paint can. For weeks, Marjorie had treated authority like something you could manufacture with enough trucks, enough paperwork, enough frightened homeowners, and enough confidence. Natalie had possessed more actual authority than anyone involved, and she had refused to use a single ounce of it for me. At first, that had frustrated me. Now I understood. Dad used to say a fence could move, but a marker didn't. Turns out property wasn't the only thing with boundaries. Power had them too. Marjorie thought power meant having enough people behind you to cross someone else's line. My wife taught me something better. Real power was knowing exactly where your authority ended and having the discipline not to take one step farther.